Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Axolotl of Awesome event, in which the Axolotl is added to the game. So let's get into that. So this Axolotl troop ends up coming in with yellow, blue, and arcanes if you end up needing that. As far as the troop itself, you're pretty much not going to be using this for much. It creates a mixture of blue and green, and then it gets to submerge itself. Gets to do this for 10 mana, while also having a +1 blue. There is very, very little situations where you'd actually use this double mix of mana accumulation, and with pretty much no other follow-up other than the little submerge it has, which is pretty much nothing, it doesn't really get much value out of its ability. There are much better mana accumulators out there, and I don't really foresee this being useful in almost any situation. Even if you gave it half mana start off with like some kind of beast combo with it, it still isn't really going to be the greatest, and it's probably a hard pass as far as ever actually using it for a team, but you'd still accumulate it for upgrading kingdoms nonetheless, or if you needed the arcane. As far as other things that we have going on for extra bonuses, we have ourselves some 10% to all Merlantis and 10% to all Merfolk. This is pretty decent, as almost 20%, or almost the entirety of the kingdom has 20% bonus this week, due to almost all of them being Merfolk, so it works out pretty well. You can also have 40 additional souls if you use this thing in PvP and Explore. However, it is more efficient just doing normal soul farming methods than it is to bother using this as one whole slot, so you could pretty much just ignore that for this week. As far as event key drop table, we have, of course, a Merlantis week, so the entire drop table is Merlantis. As far as what that drop table consists, it is everything here with the exception of 5 things. One is Tuskor, which is only available through the raids this week, and the other 4 are all of the Sea of Sorrow troops, which are only available from opening up Chaos Shards within Sea of Sorrows. As far as the drop table, it's probably overall worth skipping on event keys. There are a few good things in here, however, most of the good things that are from this kingdom are either extremely high rarity, like Aquaticus being mythic, or are obtained pretty much for free, like Azura, which you get from completing out the questline for Merlantis, as well as Crysturtle, which is only a rare that you can easily get off of gold and glory keys. So for the most part, you could probably just skip out on it, because most of the lower rarity things that are good, you're just going to be able to get pretty easily. And all the higher rarity stuff is just probably not worth going for, especially since you might accidentally get an Undyne, and Undyne's pretty much only used for blue counter. A lot of good blue synergy, if nothing else, from this kingdom. So if you've been lacking some stuff for Blue Guild War Day or something, I guess you could throw a little bit down. But overall, probably a good week to skip the event key drops and wait till a better week rolls around. Given that it is a Merlantis week and it is a raids, that means our raids is associated specifically to Merlantis. As far as what we have for options for that is pretty much everything that we just saw in the same menu over there, as far as what you'll be able to use. And of course, you don't have a weapon restriction here, unlike some of the other events, so you will be able to use absolutely anything that you want. In this particular instance, we ended up going down the route of a Mang into basically just a raid troop. Pretty standard way to end up running a raid event, but it still works nonetheless. We are doing this with Titan mostly for safety's sake, since we get our barrier. We're also using it for some enrage, so we can hit through any kind of score reduction they may have, or any kind of dodge, or any other annoying abilities that might get in our way. So right here, we're basically just going to want to keep going and accumulating for mana wherever we can. We can go convert here if we so choose. We do have alignment on purple, so I guess we could go for that. This will give us a full Mang that we can then go throw down. And it is important to get down that Mang as early as we can to give us a really high amount of attack so that we can now one-shot everything. You want to do this because if we didn't take that, we wouldn't have had enough skull damage to kill. But now every single one of our skulls gets a kill. And if he doesn't ruin that, we're going to have alignment, and of course he ruins it. We have yellow to skull, which is the main thing we want to get alignment on. It does have purple to red as well. I mean, red to purple. However, the skull one is much more important to end up landing, as of course the whole premise of this team is to hit him with a bunch of skulls by using the Mang, and we basically just keep cycling the board over and over again until we can get that. We can also use this to counter out the Valraven directly, since it does get to deny out all of the yellows here, while also giving us the kill, and it just takes skull to skull, and pretty much once you get one Nimue down, it's just going to all fall down from there, as far as the rest of troops dropping out, and that's pretty much all we have to do for raids. It's pretty easy. As far as his effect, he has that stun burn. Normally he's not going to be able to get it off, and one nice thing about using Titan is if you have it fully traded, it does have immune to stun attached to it, which I actually don't currently have set to it, but you do want to go and while doing this, probably have it set to stun, so let me go do that. So when I go copy paste them over, it's actually the right perk. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure it's running with stun, and in case Dugov does get a poke off, it'll make sure you maintain all of the traits that you currently have on your hero. So ends up working out pretty good for that. But there we go. So, yep, pretty easy raids this week overall. Just kind of use the standard Mang to raid troop combo, and the assisting skull spam ends up working out very well to make sure you get through all of it. As far as events that we have going on today, there's one very, very exceedingly important thing to mention, and that is today is Silver Necropolis, or Necropolis, however you say it. And the really relevant part about this is one of the best weapons in the entire game is available right now. If you spend, how much is that? 30, 60, 210. If you spend 410 gems or craft this thing in Soulforge, you should do so. It is the absolute best, not the absolute best, but one of the best like 5 weapons in the entire game. Probably the most annoying. It's the best at that, if nothing else. It has a double troop lifesteal, meaning you actually get to do true damage and you get to keep the life to the last 2 enemies. It gets to death mark them, which is pretty much just a free chance that you end up getting a kill. It gets bless onto itself, so you don't need to worry about stats effects. It gets a 3 mana drain onto the enemy, so you first thought, so that you will potentially end up countering out their cast, which will make them take a whole nother turn. And it has enchant, so you end up getting the little bit of mana over time. It also has a scatter, so I guess you can kind of consider it a barrier removal as well. However, that does happen after the lifesteal thing, not before. But anyways, this weapon is really, really good. The biggest thing it's lacking is no board control. But other than that, highly advise getting this thing. You can only get this one day, literally only one day. It is only available today on Tuesday for the next, or throughout the entire day. And then once it goes to the next day, throughout the rest of this week, you will not be able to get it. So make sure to do so. It is available either here for 410 gems or slightly cheaper if you get it in Soulforge. It will craft you other material though, but you can end up getting it for 200 diamonds and 400 of its 2 color of brown and purple, as well as 10,000 souls and 2 celestial, of course. But I'll end up giving you the same way if you don't want to end up spending gems towards it. But I do highly advise it. You won't be able to get this thing for probably another 5 or so months, so definitely make sure to get it today. And do keep in mind it is only available today and for no other day as of the recording of this. So as far as when we're posting the video, so do make sure to go and get it. So that's pretty relevant. Wednesday we'll be getting the Blue Guild War pet. Thursday we have the Tidecaller hero class. It's okay hero class. Normally Frost Mages use instead. This basically has a higher amount of Submerge with a smaller amount of Freeze, whereas Frost Mage is a much higher amount of Freeze with a smaller amount of Submerge. And obviously Freeze, generally speaking, is the better mechanic, so this class is almost never used unless making like a really weird Merfolk team, which is sometimes done, and if nothing else has 20% bonus stats this week. And other than that, we have no event this weekend. However, because we have no event this weekend, this Saturday we are getting the 2019 Shark Week pet. So if you didn't end up getting that last year, that one cosmetic pet, you'll be able to do so this Saturday. And that'll be running as a day-long pet this Saturday. But other than that, nope, no Friday event, no new content coming in. And yeah, you'll just be able to go regain that one pet if you haven't already gotten it. And even if you have, you'll be able to get some more copies for it. Anyways, so as far as Soulforge this week, we have pretty much nothing of extremely high relevance. Main thing I would say to probably go for out of everything that is available here is most likely the Tina 9000 or the Mistralis. Tina 9000, biggest benefit this currently has is of everything that currently exists within the game, it is the best 50% spell reduction troop in the game. So it has that going for it, has really high damage output, has an armor gain, which technically makes it even better than that 175% magic reduction troop. And the main reason for that is you gain so much armor, and assuming that they're running physical damage, you actually gain more value out of using Tina than you do of the other troop, which is kind of weird, but it does end up working out that way. Also has the potential of getting some really high skull damage, though you generally don't use it in first slot. The furthest up you normally use it is second slot, so if your first slot dies, you have a really high amount of skull damage that you would have accumulated from your armor gains, which then converts into really high skull pokes, while still having the very nice true damage pokes. And they fixed how Tina ends up casting a little over a year ago, so she does target properly now, where she used to waste some of her hits. So she is pretty good value overall, and a really nice troop to consider. As far as Mistralis, the biggest thing that this has that's relevant is the automatic extra turn that it has. It is one of only 2 mythics that currently have an automatic extra turn, and for this reason ends up making it very, very good. The other one, of course, being Iron Gut, which is pretty much like the strongest meta thing for Delves for the most part, or one of them. So yeah, really, really strong. Works really good with things that have a lot of mana accumulation, so they can get an automatic free extra turn for that damage, and gets the jumble board in there as well, which will hopefully keep your turns going. So overall, pretty nice troop. Even has a little bit of enchant, so even if you lose your turns, a little bit weird in its mechanic because you generally don't want to lose turns, but if you do, you gain 2 mana to your entire team per turn when you get them all enchanted, so ends up working out pretty well. and has some free spell reduction on top of all that. So one of those two is probably the main ones I would say to go for if you're going to bother crafting anything this week. Other than that, we have ourselves, of course, Life and Death. Don't forget to go get this by the end of this week. 100% highly advise that. However, as far as other weapons that we have here, we do have the Merlantis bonus one for a bunch of green and blue, and we also have the similar thing, but for Merfolk. I would probably say that going for the Merfolk one is overall going to be better, because it has a little bit of other overlap. For example, you can end up using it with that one armor tier troop. Gosh, why can I not remember his name all of a sudden? The one that tiers all 4 of their armor ends up working out pretty good for that, because it has the blue brown conversion there, or the accumulation, so you can end up feeding right into it. Megavore is his name. This one was the one I was referring to. Main reason you'd want to go for the Merfolk one, other than the fact that it feeds directly into him, but of course there are Merfolk in locations that isn't simply in the kingdom. So you can end up getting it in other kingdoms like Blackhawk, for example. They're not all just saturated right into Merlantis. They're spread about in quite a few different places. So you end up getting a little bit better value than just going strictly into the Merlantis bonus there. Anyways, as far as other teams, of course, as normal, they'll all be in the description below as well as in the first comment. For raids, it's the same thing that we showed over there. Pretty standard. Just a Mang into the raid troop. And we have Skull Spam to be able to use this week. And we have a little bit of a backup tank. I'm not sure if you even really need Crysturtle. Might be able to replace it out with another option. It's mostly for safety precautions, so you can keep barrier on ground, and also just to get the quicker Mang if you're able to get it in time. It's also a nice little bit of board control. As far as for the event for doing the delves, we can end up doing a Mountain Crusher or Jar of Eyes into double Gargoyle. This will end up killing it out pretty well. The restriction for the delves is brown and purple as far as what we'll be able to use. So you'll be able to use double Gargoyle into a mana accumulation option and end up getting that going pretty well. As far as our next thing over here, this is a little bit of a more expensive 100 to 500, where we end up using Ketras the Bull. He was just available the other week, so if you end up getting him, you can end up doing that with Urskaya Shield, which you get from 250 wins from the Urskaya hero class, which is the Sentinel hero class. And you just do that to get a big armor boost. It boosts based on all of their attack, which makes it so it scales upwards. This then goes on to Ketras, which allows him to then scale upwards to whatever the battles are, and then you'd be able to go get really big hits off of the Ketras. Also gives it barrier, so even if it gets hit, it won't be able to lose any HP or armor, which it needs for its boost ratio to do damage. And then the Thrall and Leprechaun are just there for mana accumulation. Keep in mind, you can go pretty much any kind of team with this kind of format, where you do 2 things up front, at least one of them being a damage source, and then you have Thrall plus Leprechaun. We do have access to purple for this, so you can end up using that really strong mana accumulation combo if you want to do so. Other than that, for the lower level range, this does the exact same thing that I just mentioned, using the Thrall with a Leprechaun combo. Really cheap. Thrall is common, Leprechaun is ultra rare. This does need to be fully traded though, and ideally Thrall with fully traded as well, but he's a common, so it should be pretty easy in that regard. And with this we threw Mang with Dragonian Monk, Mang being of course one of the most solid things that you could ever really use, that is super accessible to upscaling throughout the entire game. Gets to tear away some armor, gets a little bit of poke damage, and all that armor becomes attack, which allows you to upscale to any battle that you're doing. So if they have really high durability, you'll be able to keep up with it simply by using a Mang. Dragonian Monk here he's pretty much one of the best barriers in the entire game, and he's pretty accessible. He's 50% mana start, only an ultra rare, ends up working out very, very well. It's based on how many yellow, however, as long as you hit 4 yellow, you will guarantee get 4 times barrier, which will barrier your entire team, which is very helpful for not dying, and it's pretty much the whole purpose of this, since earlier on in the game your stats might be a little bit lower, and you'll be able to use barrier to hopefully survive all the way to 500, and in combination you'll pretty much just be able to tank all the way with Mang, keep doing your instant one-shot pokes, and you'll be able to get it done. Obviously not the quickest of teams, but it would be a rather safe team that even from a early game, mid game kind of perspective should be able to get you pretty deep into the delve. Other than that, for Pure Faction, if you're going to be doing Pure Faction, Bone Golem can pretty much solo this faction. Ends up exploding a gem, inflicting Death Mark to a random enemy for every skull destroyed, meaning you can 4 times Death Mark the opposing team, which is really strong, particularly against the battles that don't have Death Mark immunity. Do keep in mind that the first and final battle does have a lot of Death Mark immunity, so in those battles it won't really be that helpful, but the in-between battles, of course, that'll be more of a helpful mechanic. But the main thing that makes this thing really relevant is the attack plus armor gain. This allows you to both gain durability while also being able to do more damage to the enemy. This is really good for stacking up to basically become unkillable, and then once you stack up several times, you just start killing them excessively. Not to mention you can use the one explode in order to set up skull hits, and ends up working out very well. Even has some score reduction to go with it, and you can pretty much just solo the entire thing with Bone Golem alone. But of course, you could use some mana accumulation behind it, helps get its mana that it needs. And you do generally want to run one of the legends, mostly because it has resummon on it. So if you happen to accidentally die on one of your troops, it's a good way to go and resummon them back, and just do it that way. But yeah, overall, probably one of the easier factions, not absolute easiest. Could probably even be done without potions. Mainly all you really need to do is get Bone Golem going to really high stats, and you pretty much auto win from there. Of course, he could end up dying though, and of course the enemy does have a Bone Golem of their own, so if they get theirs up quickly while you're not able to, you can kind of backfire inversely. But overall, pretty easy faction, I would say. And other than that, this Thursday we have ourselves the Tide Caller event. Of course, that's the hero class for the week from Atlantis. As far as what you can run for this is pretty much just kind of center around Nimue, kind of the same way that we ended up doing it for the raid event. You can kind of do it similarly, though obviously you don't need the extra damage against the boss or anything. So with this, we kind of just went with a Mountain Crusher, Nimue, Azura, and Merline to end up doing that. You can kind of build around almost anything. And of course, you can throw in the mythics if you do have it, if you're planning on going very deep. But generally, as I normally advise for hero classes, it's pretty much only worth going for the free battles. I wouldn't really bother going any further, as the amount of gems you have to spend for the event relative to what you actually get in return is pretty bad value, and is normally worth just skipping on. And even for something like the Tuesday faction event like we have today, it's normally better just to throw the 30 gems in order to get it completely done, and not really go any further unless you're planning on pretty much maxing it all the way. But anyways, guys, that will wrap it up. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone. Catch you later.